should learn about civilizations from a time before they were ruined by idiots. So, 5 book recommendations. Number 1, Polybius, his history. Basically, he had this idea that Rome overtook and dominated the Mediterranean over the course of 53-ish years. And so he wrote a book about it, and he's often considered the father of political history, if not political science itself. He talks about the Roman constitution, what we would call as a constitution, even though it's not really a constitution by modern standards. But he talked about that, and he compared the Roman system of government to that of the Greeks, which is pretty interesting. Then we've got Livy, Titus Livius. He's got Ab Urbe Condita, which is basically a history of Rome from the beginning. And he's what we call from the analytic school. So he basically wrote everything year by year, which is pretty helpful if you want to learn about things. Based off my dissertation, one of the things that I focused on from Ab Urbe Condita was the war with Hannibal. And I think it's books 21 through 41, maybe? I don't know, something like that. Anyway, the war with Hannibal, enthralling read on its own. Then we've got Xenophon's The Anabasis. So basically after the Peloponnesian War, the Persians were having a dynastic dispute, a group of roughly 12,900. They call it the army of 10,000, but there was just under 13,000. And they go over as mercenaries, there's double crossing, and then they have to spend their time fleeing out of Asia Minor to get back to Greece. And it's a really good story about how some random captain, the only surviving officer, is forced to take command. And you know, he's low ranking, and when you see statues of him, he looks like he was stoned all the time, so that's pretty interesting. Then we've got Thucydides, Peloponnesian War. So history of the Peloponnesian War talks about, it's really kind of the first examination of how wars start. And it's where we get the Thucydidean pretext for war, which are fear, honor, and self-interest. And so Thucydides thought that those 3 things were the common motivating factors for all wars, which is why he wrote that the history of the Peloponnesian War was not just a history of his time, but a history for all time. And then lastly, we have Virgil, Aeneid. And basically, Augustus went to Virgil and said, hey, we need to have a moralistic interpretation or a moral guide for the Romans who have embraced decadence to the point of absurdity. And I want you to write that history is going to demonstrate what good Roman values are. So he created this fictive history that reflected, you know, what the Romans themselves thought Romanness entailed, and he turned it into a history called the Aeneid. And basically it talks about how Dido, who was the founding queen of Carthage, was a scorned lover, and thus, you know, Rome and Carthage were fated to go to war with one another. So also a very engaging read, especially if you can read Latin. I definitely recommend reading it in Latin. So there you have it. There's 5 books, 5 book recommendations from ancient histories that I find absolutely enthralling. Thanks for watching.